All right. Well, welcome to another episode of New Wine Uncorked, and we're stoked that you are here to join us for this the Friday before the week of Christmas, which is pretty exciting. For I don't know, I guess I like celebrating life. I'm sure most of us like celebrating life, and so when we get a chance, as whether you want to call it a nation or a group of people celebrating, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, all of these. And so I get where around events, and I see where though then that we can take that and go to a different direction, like with consumerism and capitalism. And so sometimes then we miss out on the truth of these days and these times of the season because maybe it gets too overcapitalized, and so then we forget. And so today we're talking about this continued. Last week, if you were with us, we talked about, and if you remember, Pastor Jim towards the end said, hey, what if we stopped and talked about some ways that we can pause so as to reflect the truth of this season, And so today's topic is Christmas cheer today and tomorrow. Ask my neighbor. We talk about this within the Christian realm of do unto others as you want them to do unto you. The world knows this is the golden rule. Jesus talks about and says, hey, you love your neighbor as yourself. And so when we talk about this aspect of being love, according to the Christian Bible, the person that we would be able to ask really, or should be able to ask, is our neighbor. And so do I live out the Christmas cheer year round? And so not only today do we want to pause and reflect on ways that we can really, for this next week, do what we need to stop and take in the truth of this time, but then also stop and reflect. If each one of us, if I was to go to Phil's house or Phil were to come to my house, and then we went outside together and without prepping our neighbors or anything like that, went to the right and went to the left, knocked on their door and just asked them. And Phil said, hey, I'm here. I'm a good friend of Matt's. And we were just talking about neighborliness. Would our neighbors even go, oh, Matt, yeah, he and his wife, the Farlows, all, or would they go, who? And what's more, if we put a sign out on our lawn that says, hey, come join us for, a church service, would our neighbors know that we're Christian? Or would they look at our sign and go, I didn't know that those people were Christian. Oh, they have a religious affiliation. So this is the kind of the conversation that we want to talk about today is, and you're invited to join us. If you're there watching, then you're there on Facebook with the New Wine Facebook page, and you just go click right there on like. And that way from here on out, anytime we do videos or uploads, we have a New Wineskins has an academic journal called Cultural Encounters. And so we have a biannual publication. And so when that gets published, you'll be notified if you hit like up right there on your Facebook page. And then also you can interact with us. And so there's going to be some profound things being said here from my colleagues. And so you'll want to write some of this stuff down and you'll want to interact with them and you'll say, hey, wow. And you have questions. You can just do that right there in the comment section, the chat section here on Facebook. And so I throw it out there to you three because much wiser and, than I at my level that we sit at right here. And I'm asking, what is it? What are a couple of things that you, me personally, we do to help pause for this, but what are some of the things do you think that hinders us as just the human beings in today's 21st century from pausing and actually reflecting, regardless of where we stand with Jesus, but just in this time, because this time is set up for community from October through December, really feels like, how can we as humans really step into embrace that? So first, it's a twofold question. How do you personally pause to reflect this time as a Christian, to really take in the incarnation, the birth of God? And second, and so let's just do that. Let's talk about that. And then we can all jump in. And I'll start because I know people are like, oh, when the questioner starts asking, they never have to ask questions. And so, and we don't have Pastor Jim here to stop and say, well, Matt, let me ask you a question, so I'm going to ask myself the question. So how do I, we pause and reflect? And so last week I was talking about how we take time to set up nativity scenes. One of the cool things each year is my wife and I try to find a new nativity scene somewhere out there that's really cool and reflective of where, and it's been neat to see the progression of nativity scenes in our own home, and then our kids have been brought into that. Another thing that we do is ornaments, for the tree. And so as our kids have gotten older, and so this is the first year that Kayla, for people who don't know, I mean, everyone knows, I mean, who doesn't watch New Wine Uncorked on Facebook and YouTube? So everyone knows us. I know the four of us are kind of like walking pop stars. So people are like, we get that. But Kayla is my daughter, and this is the first year that, because with her marriage, and then they're having a baby, this is the first year where there is a difference, because she and her husband are going to have their thing. And so we've been able to celebrate and share by them taking some of her ornaments that were on the tree, whether they were gifts. And for the last, since when Kayla was actually in the womb of my wife, my mom, so for everyone else, again, so you're starting to connect the dots, Beth is my mom. She actually started giving ornaments to the kids before they were born. So they have years on there, and there's these really nice Waterford crystal ornaments, and they have little scenes, or some they're scenes of Christmas. And so each of our kids have, for every year that of their life, they haven't. And so we've gotten a chance to go through. So every year when we put the tree up, we go through the ornaments and we talk about where we were at when that came into our life. And it's been really neat. And so then the gifts, the ornaments. So this year was the first year where Kayla got to then take her set of ornaments that were started by her grandmother and my mom, and we got to share that. And then she has her own ornaments. So that's a way as a family that we pause, we go through the ornaments and remember. So, and it's a neat thing, right? It draws us into then the people who are in our lives. So what about Phil? What do you guys do?
Oh man, we we haven't had a whole bunch of traditions that we do every year. One of the things that we do is we get together on Christmas Eve with my mom. So we've done that probably for the past 10 years, I want to say. And so mom will have gifts for my kids and stuff like that. So we'll do that, and then we'll do our own thing on Christmas Day. But yeah, that's usually it. We don't have a whole bunch of anything. Yeah. it's it's kind of a trip. Like I think I said last week, the first year I pastored, maybe 5, 6 years ago, was the first year I celebrated Advent. I didn't really even think about it at all. So I've just used that as a time just to think about the themes of Advent and just try to slow down and not get too busy with buying gifts. I think that's for me, that's the thing that kind of buckles the slowing down, is that I have to get all the stuff for people, especially like being a student. I mean, most Christmases the past few years, I was a student like the week before Christmas. And so and so like I have a week to buy gifts and everything, so I'm rushing to do all the stuff like I am right now. And so and so it's pretty interesting to just think, okay, don't be burdened too much with buying gifts, but just I guess, and this is a thing that I do. I don't take requests from my family. So my kids cannot give me a Christmas list. I need to pay attention to you enough to know the kind of things you want and you need, and I'm usually right. I think my wife would disagree every so often, but like I've made my children cry with gifts that I've given them, without them telling me, and I plop something on them. They're like, "What? Wait, how'd you know?" So that kind of thing. I really try to pay attention throughout the year and try to train my kids to do the same. So yeah.
Cool.
It's interesting when you say that, Phil, because I always ask for a list. And I don't always get a list, to be honest, from all of the family. But having 3 kids and 9 grandkids, and I know people and I know what I want to get them. But with the younger kids today, they are so specific, because I think that's one thing with the internet. They can research, they can go in the stores, they know exactly what Lego set they want and what one they don't want. So for the young kids, it really does kind of help. But I agree with you. I prefer to give from the heart. And my husband is one who it's just sort of, well, whatever he likes, everybody's going to like. And, and what I've learned is, no, that's not true. So, you know, the tradition of the ornaments, and they're Swarovski stars is what they are, started when Kayla was born. And it was interesting this year because Costco didn't have them. And that's where the last probably 5 to 10 years I've been able to get them. That meant more to me to make sure I had that than any other present. So it is those traditions from the heart that I think mean the most. You know, we fill the stockings nobody comes on Christmas Day because they all have their own celebrations. But what my husband and I have started doing is we'll go to each home to share gifts intimately together. We are having a dinner next week where most of us will be there, but we're not doing gifts. It's just a dinner because we want to have the intimacy of the moment with the gifts. And I'm like you. I feel I like to think that people know me well enough to just get me something. And even if I see it and it's not something I think I want, it fills my heart with such joy. And in a lot of times, it is something that I really enjoy after the thought. I never would have thought to put it on a list. So I think the traditions are something to be treasured and valued. And it's I remember the ones when I was a child. I remember having my 3 kids and what we would do, and now each of them is expanding, and they're taking a bit of what we did in their raising, and we are adjusting, just like Matt and Kayla's, you know, separation for Christmas morning. My husband and I've had to adjust to it's just us on Christmas Day. And so we're starting to set up new celebrations, and I still deck out the whole house, and he always goes, nobody's going to see it. And I said, oh yes, they will. so I've, you know, it's interesting to me. And, you know, Kayla, with this being your first Christmas and you're bringing 2 families, sets of traditions together, what are you and Chris doing to establish your own set of traditions?
Well, this year is kind of crazy. I feel like the first year it's always kind of crazy because everyone's like, what are you doing? We have this. When can you come to our thing? So we kind of set like a, you know, gift thing for each other. Like, only let's just do a few for each other. We don't need to, you know, do a bunch, and then just get a few fun things for stockings. So we don't really have like an actual mantle or anything to like hang the stockings. So they are attached to our wall. And our tree was fun to do together. That was really fun to go through the ornaments and kind of, we have like a combination of both of our households of ornaments. And so it was really cool to like put those together, and do that. And then like pick how we wanted to decorate our tree. Like, do we want to do tinsel? Do we want to do like, how do you decorate a tree? And so we got to decide that, and it's fun. It's fun to figure it out together. I don't know what our Christmas morning is going to look like. I think that we're actually probably going to go over to his dad's house and do it with them, because they like doing you know, presents and stuff in the morning, and I don't really care. We've kind of, as the Farlow 4, we kind of had different traditions all throughout the years as well on Christmas, just moving around and stuff. It looks different a little bit each year. So it'll be fun to kind of figure out what that looks like for us. Next year, it'll be even more different with a kid in the mix. So we'll get to figure it out even more. But I really like the tradition that we've had from my family of the like kind of 3 gifts, because it makes you have to think about what you want to give someone. And if you set yourself up with that intention, then you can, you know, spend the whole year like noticing, okay, well, what are 3 things that like they could use, or that they would want, or that they would use, you know, or what's something that I can make them. I like painting, and that's something that I have done a lot of the times for gifts, as you know. So I like, you know, trying to figure out, well, what's something that I could paint this person that they would enjoy, that's kind of reflective of them. And that makes me have to pause and sit with who they are and what I want to do for them as well.
Yeah, don't you feel, I wonder, even with all of us, regardless of how people get prepared or how they go into seasons such as this, I think one of the things that each one of us needs to be mindful of, especially for people who claim the title, who claim the identity of Christian, is to realize, regardless of what we're doing, if we have the ability to think about how we prepare, set up our Christmas, then we are part of that fine group of people who are haves, you know. And it's, I think sometimes during the seasons of giving and celebration, one of the hardest things to do is to stop and reflect on others who are not in this situation, you know, and not just to reflect so as to make myself feel better, but to actually reflect on how can I actually engage a group of people who I know that are around me who don't have the ability to do this, you know. And I think of, especially in light of the tornadoes that have hit in the Midwest, and those families that, I mean, this year, they're not even thinking about the things that any of the stuff that we talked about, you know. And last week you were talking about your loss, the loss that you suffered, Phil, you know, with the loss of a family member, a parent losing their child, and how can then any kind of celebration of life ever happen sometimes with that, you know. And you look at that, you have to, and I think about too on the loss of, like, when people are going into Christmas time, we talked about community. There are a number of people who are alone, you know. And so I also just say this because I'm really speaking to myself. One of the interesting things about Zoom is that if you're really talking to the camera and you look at it, if you have it set up right, it looks like you're talking to yourself. And a lot of times, you know, I think we need to have those Zoom-esque mirror conversations with ourselves during these times and saying, hey, look, am I living out the Christmas cheer by being generous and cheerful with those in my life beyond Christmas 25, you know, when December 25, you know, Christmas 2021, like into 2022, when January rolls around, are my neighbors, you know, on the left and the right, and even in the realm of where I'm at, the grocery store, those kind of things. Will people walk away feeling the Christmas cheer, not maybe knowing why or what's different about me, but they feel that celebration of life, you know? And it made me think, as we were talking about this, gosh, there's times where I take for granted everything that we all just spoke about, you know. And I'm wondering if, Phil, before we got on, we were talking about your doctoral studies and how you're able to partner with the churches and things like this. How is it that the church has somewhat separated herself from society, where she's not even participating at that level like what you're doing with the academy, but more than that, where I feel like the church after the 25th will stop thinking about those families that they just got gifts for, right? We just got gifts. Almost 85 to 90% of the churches in the United States today probably has some sort of form of gift tree that they're pulling out. I have to admit, I've been to a lot of churches, and I've led a lot of churches, you know, a few churches where after the 25th, we didn't have a tree year round. Now that I think about it, on families but the families' need didn't stop on the 26th. How can we as church leaders and church participants be more mindful of that, like to push one another, you know?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things I think is just having that constant sense of generosity. Always stay connected to nonprofit, always stay connected to some people in need, always stay connected. But I think and I say this all too often when I read Matthew 6, like, blessed are the poor. Who wants to be poor? You know, it's like that's a thing. And it's like, well, Jesus did, and he became human. God became human. Ridiculous, right? And so we kind of have to have that mindset too, year round. Now it does uptick, of course, during these times of years during Christmas. But definitely, man, it's something we have to stay reminded of as a church, that, and like I said, with the places I work, I see churches come in every week, um, and host meals, play bingo, just have a good time with the men, because they're staying connected to it, and that's just more of that, of more is just staying connected. And even all of the one-off volunteers that we have come in, they're all connected to a church somehow or another. And again, it's just keeping that, maintaining that sense of that generosity, and being aware of the other, being aware of the poor among you, least of these, and the like. So just keeping that sense always there is something that we all have to do as Christians.
I one of the things I've struggled with since we moved here, which was 2 years ago, and COVID hit, so we were very isolated, is finding that place where I do volunteer. And I think part of my hesitation has been, I am not connected with one church in particular. We have not become members. We for Christmas Eve, we're going to 2 different services because we want to celebrate with our children, but unfortunately we're not all at the same church, which is my ultimate prayer, that eventually, and I keep telling Matt, maybe we should start our own family church. We got enough people, got enough members, we'll get it, we can do it, so it's, I always focus on, I am the church also in my body, and so when I go somewhere, I don't have to say, oh, I'm here on behalf of such and such a church. It's just, I'm Beth and I want to serve you and I want to help you. And I think, Matt, to your point, we can do it in every conversation. They called me today to change the doctor's office, to change an appointment because of a broken machine. And when I hung up with the young lady, I praised her and thanked her and had her name and said, it was an amazing thing. You did a great job. She was overwhelmed because I had recognized her and just said, thank you. And I think that we don't do enough of that. And that, to me, we look at serving as some magnificent act. I have to go somewhere, I have to do something. It's in our words. It's in, I tell people to have blessed days all the time. I pause and I thank them. It drives my husband nuts. But when somebody does that for me and knows my name, they listened or they read my name tag, it means more to me than anything in the world. And so I think we can spread the church just by a smile and by a word. But those big acts and volunteering have to be a part of it. And it's something that I know I'm looking forward to and I'm committing to in 2022. Having a resolution of so many hours a week I'll be serving others, because right now I'm serving my family and I'm settling into retirement and I'm settling into having my own schedule. And it's interesting that you can whittle away the hours and serve yourself when in fact I could be out, serving others, and that would bring great joy to my heart. I did want to go back to the thing on traditions, because one thing my husband and I did, our first Christmas, we bought this little tree. We were living in married housing and we bought this little tree. This is the 50th year that we've put that out. And I have to say, even he delights in just having that remembrance. It's looks lousy, it's falling apart, but it's in a very prominent place. And he strings it with lights and takes care of it. And the styrofoam that it's in is getting wonky, but those are the kind of things that mean more and bring joy to his heart, which brings joy to my heart. And we bought it because we were remembering the season and trying to be joyful. So Kayla, with your first Christmas, have something special and precious that in 50 years, when you do get it out, you're like, wow, we had this our first year. And it's like I say, my joy is in trying to bring joy to others. I love to give gifts. It drives people nuts. I went to my son's house this week just to drop off pizza. He's a pilot, and he was getting ready to go back flying. And I took a candle and a candle holder and gave it to his fiance. She goes, "Would you stop giving us things just because? Why do you do that?" I said, "Because I love you and I care about you and it brings joy to me." And she paused and went, "Oh, well, thank you." Now, she's not a believer. She knows Jesus, but she's not a believer. My job there is to be an example of him at her level. And as a family, we pray, but our job is to be at the level of the person, not to slam them with cross. And I could take a Bible over there with her name on it and all that, and that's going to push her away. But it's bringing joy. So, I don't know any other way to put it. It's seeing my son and my daughter here and making a new friend, and Phil, or my granddaughter, it brings joy to my heart to have these open conversations, because unfortunately in life, we miss them. I've been very intentionally going to coffee with Kayla because I want to have that. And I think that that's where we can minister. And if we're talking about Jesus in Starbucks together, there's somebody around us who might hear. And then we are ministering. So, but remembering those that have less than us, I think is very difficult, because I remember them, but do I act on it? And I think that that's where many of us fall down. And I'm going to be very intentional in my efforts going forward to make sure that I do act on it.
One thing that has been really cool this past year for me has been my sister-in-law, who's like recently just really diving into her faith. And I told her multiple times, like, dude, you are so inspiring to me. You help me like I want to be in the word like you are, And she's like, I read this today, and what about this? And what do you think about this? And we should talk about this. And I'm like, I love you so much. Like, that's so awesome. And it's so cool to hear that and to see it. And so that's been like really cool for me to just be like, oh yes. And we'll have so many different conversations and everywhere. And I'll be on the phone with her in the supermarket, like in Winco, just talking. And there's people around me that are like, wow, that's an intense biblical conversation. But I was reminded the other day, I was making a deposit for my boss in the bank, and there was a lady at the next teller, and she was like, I just wanted to say, I don't want to offend you, but I just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. My God is good, and blessed, may your day be blessed. And it was just so awesome. And I was walking out and I was like, Merry Christmas. Like, I hope you have a good day. And she was like, I saw your keychain. It says, I love Jesus. And I just love that. And I forget that I have that as a keychain, but it keeps me accountable in public situations where I'm walking into wherever and I have my keys and it says, I heart Jesus. And it's right there, black and white. And I'm like, well, if I got this like around my neck, I got to make sure that I am, not in stores and you're like, oh. I got to be like, can I help you get that from the shelf? Do you need anything? Like, it keeps me on track, which is something that I probably need. I need some more of those reminders. We have so many things going on today with social media and all this just in our faces, like buy this, do this. And part of that is good, where you are constantly reminded of the people around you, regardless of distance. But in another sense, it's a lot of advertisements and notifications that can't always be silenced. So having those moments to, whether it's other people in your life that are inspiring to you, and just remind you to be like, yeah, you know what, like, let's read the Bible together. Let's pause and let's reflect on this passage and what it's speaking to us. Or if it's, a lanyard, a keychain that's like, yeah, you know what, I gotta make sure my actions reflect where my heart's at. Just having those daily reminders is a good thing for me.
Yeah, it's interesting with our language at how many I would imagine and I have not done a research on this at all, so this is just a guess, is that a lot of Christians feel stifled by what they can say, just being able to, that the anxiety that goes through when you're leaving a place or wherever, to say bye, Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays. And when you walk out and if you said Happy Holidays, you're like, oh, was that an opportunity to let them know that I was a Christian? Because only Christians say Merry Christmas, right? You know, it's like, that's not the case, you know, but it's still something to think about, because for those that follow New Wine, we know that on Tuesdays, we get together on this app called Clubhouse, which is an online or a mobile app. You should check it out. And so our conversation last Tuesday this week was on judgment. And one of the things that got brought up was how a lot of Christians during Christmas time do feel that judgment of the world. And so if you say Merry Christmas, are you not being politically correct? You know, because as a Christian, I want to love my, because through this course of this last year, you know, there's been a lot of talk about social justice and the injustice for my Black and brown brothers and sisters. And so then if I have the Black and brown brothers and sisters who are not Christian, who happen to be from, let's say they are Islam or they're even Buddhist, is it offensive then if I say Merry Christmas? And so then you've got Christians going, well, wait, I want to show love. And so by one of the ways to show love is to understand who's in front of me. And then if I understand who's in front of me, then their brains start going, wait, can Muslims celebrate Christmas? And wait, did this person's from, you know, and they start. And so then they just feel that all the judgment just with language. And so I think a lot of Christians just go, forget it. And then that's the case of the world drowning out your love. Just because someone in front of us doesn't celebrate Christmas doesn't mean that we can't be joyous about it and then embrace their celebrations. You know, our neighbors, one of the neighbors on one side are not Christians, you know, and so they have different celebrations, and it has been absolutely intriguing to be able to discuss, oh, well, so I heard you guys, you know, celebrating this, and then him telling me, oh, this is part of our celebration. You know, when they had their child, they had some awesome celebrations, right? And so I think just that knowing who we are as people, though, because there is going to be judgment, but if it's coming from the heart, and this is where the Apostle Paul talks about in the second book to the Philippians, second chapter, where he says, have this mind, have this attitude, have this heart within you. And it's the heart of Christ. It's the mind of Christ. And so that's willing to celebrate with the people, even if I don't believe in the way that they live their philosophy of life. There are things that I can still celebrate with them. And then when I celebrate with them, what are they going to want to do? Most likely, they're going to eventually want to know about my celebrations. And I think for Christians, we get sometimes too worried about, like, hey, saying Merry Christmas might be offensive. Absolutely. But if I'm doing it to be offensive, that's wrong. But if I'm doing it when I'm leaving and I'm joyful, like that woman that you were talking about, Kayla, I would imagine that most people around her were not feeling judged. They were like, oh, she's just happy. Wow. You know, and woo, I want that Christian eggnog, you know, that they drink at their churches. Wow. You know, and so there's something infectious about Christmas joy, and there should be. This God of all creation decided to come and live with the human in this just most audacious, like crazy, absurd way by becoming a baby. I mean, again, you could have, and again, I had not done this research, but you could have like the hardest, most staunchest criminal, I think, and you put a baby around them, even if they don't want to hold it. There's something about a baby's oohing and awing and cuddle, like the noises that they make, and that just, I think, is softening. And so I think the way that God did this is something to be, why not share this story and say, and so I wonder though, Phil, because you deal with this on a daily basis, how does the lives of these guys that are coming out of addictions and things like that, you said blessed are the poor, but there's got to be a poorness within us, of whether it's poor in spirit or financially poor, where we're willing to say to God, I can't do this. How do we get to that point where that's not a weakness, that's actually a strength?
Oh man, that's the challenge. With with the men that I work with, it's not a challenge for them. They understand they've destroyed a portion of their life. They're coming, most of the time, they're coming to us broken, and they know they have challenges, and we're working through and demonstrating that they have worth in Jesus, and demonstrating they have worth in general, and they offer a contribution to the house. And so that's why it's really important to have volunteers, because these guys think that no one cares about them. And just to have a pastor who's been, one of the volunteers has been pastoring in this town for 40 some odd years, and comes and hangs out once a week with the guys and mentors a couple of guys and does discipleship Bible study with some of the guys. And he's a part of four, five, six guys that comes and hangs out. But one of them's a pastor who's just been in town for a while. And so just that, those things are really important to them. So just infusing them with value, letting them know they're important to people is the thing. But so the couple of us that work there that are pastors, that have pastored and stuff, we realize that we walk from our job and then walk into church, and it's a totally reverse situation where the guys are approaching us saying, well, I know I'm important. I don't, this Jesus stuff, I can figure this stuff out. And you're like, wait, you don't understand. You are just in the same position that these guys are in, and they just don't recognize it. And so it's just another space where we have to remind people that, yeah, the paradigm is creator and creation. And when we're looking at creator and creation, you are the poor one all the time. so just understanding that, yeah, you are in need. You do need a savior. You do need the Holy Spirit. You are in need. Whether or not financially or your bank account says you are in need. So just infusing people with that. And that's not the easiest thing to do, because it's difficult to tell people that have all that they need to live in this country and the like to sit in a pulpit on Sunday and tell them that they're broken and they're in need until they realize it. But to tell them that and remind them that every day, you may get pushed off the stage soon enough. So.
It's interesting you talk about that, because we were pushed off the stage. I mean, we thought we had everything going. This was when Matt was, I think he was a teenager, and because it was in high school, and we lost everything, and literally lost everything, and our home, and we were able to keep one car, which was Matt's car, and it was at the time we did not realize we had fallen so far into the world and not celebrated the joy of Christmas in each day and the joy of giving. But it changed us so much for the better to recognize that God is our joy and Jesus is our peace and comforter. And I remember somebody asking me right before we moved, because we were being evicted from our home, but my husband had secured a job in California. We were living in Colorado at the time. And through, we were just blessed on that day to be leaving the day the sheriff's coming to kick us out. We did not know for a period of time where we were going to go. We went jokingly looking at bridges, and we had 2 dogs, 3 cats, hamsters. We had all these pets we had to take care of along with our 3 children. And we just uprooted their lives. So we did not know how broken we were. We found out. Now we have plenty, and we have rebuilt. And it's amazing that had we not lost everything, we never would have gained anything. And somebody asked me when we were through that, how did you do it? And I said, it's all God. It's all faith, because we just went each day knowing that we would be provided for and that our children would be taken care of. And I have to tell you, I think it changed all 5 of us in our family. And because all 3 kids remember those days, we got boxes of food from people just who dropped them off. Have I ever done that? No. So this is a good reminder to me. I look at Kayla talks about her sister-in-law. I know there was a division between these 2 young ladies. And because of Christ's redeeming spirit, they now are sisters in Christ together. But they had to go through a valley to get there. And I think, Phil, that's the thing that a lot of people don't recognize, is the valley is going to come. And I know recently I went through a period where I was alone and I was sick. I was in Michigan, and Matt and I have talked about this. Satan was trying to grasp me, and I know that, but it's through the power of Christ, which is what we're celebrating at Christmas. And it's very interesting to me to listen and hopefully to grow and take a lot of this with me so that I can celebrate each day. One of my neighbors died, and my next door neighbor told me he died, and he lives 2 doors down, and his wife is not there now, but I know I need to go over there and sit with her and just talk to her. I've met her, but I never went down there before. And that's in my heart to do. And I think that's how we celebrate Christ. And I think Kayla's keychain is a prime example. People want and crave what we have. Jesus came. I read this today because I'm doing this, read the Bible every day. And I read the wrong day, but it was a good day. And Jesus came as a baby, and he stumbled and fell, and he was tempted, and he went through all the things we're going through so that he can redeem us. And we forget that he didn't just come and and have a halo and just walk through life. He struggled and was tempted and was hurt. And you know what, that really struck me. And that was in Hebrews. And it was, for me, it's remembering the other. And, something you mentioned Clubhouse, something that struck me there is when somebody said, do you write Xmas or do you write Christmas? I will never write Merry Xmas again, because Christ has to be a part of everything. When I worked at the bank, they told us we couldn't say Merry Christmas. I still did, but because I would forget. Honestly, it wasn't being a rebel, but it is a tough one. But I do believe we need to celebrate Christmas every day, and our brothers and sisters who are struggling, we need to be there because we're equal in God's eyes. As you said, Phil, they don't care whether I have a big house filled with things or whether I have a small tent in a homeless shelter. He loves me. Your name is in his hand, no matter who you are. And that's for us to share. And I think for me, it's going to start with the neighbors. My neighbor lady who makes pizzas, they own a pizza shop. So I got the pizza from there for the other night. And she said to me, I want to come to your house to see your decorations. And I want you to come to mine to see mine. Now, I don't know if she's a Christian or not, but I celebrated that. It just brought joy to my heart, and I smiled. It's like, oh yay, I've got a friend next door now. How sad. We've lived next door to each other for 2 years, and it's the first time I'm going to go to their house. We talk with her husband, but it is making the baby steps so that we can let the light of Christ shine through our actions. And I agree with Kayla. It's, when we are claiming to be these soldiers of the cross, it's important what we do. It's a good thing when I'm driving that nobody can see that I wear a cross, because I get very frustrated with people on the road, but I'm only in the car. And then I pray for forgiveness. So, that's another challenge for me.
Yeah, and I think the challenge too for any one of us, and it's when you say and for the Bible reading, I'm sure when they were talking about Christ stumbling and falling, literally as a baby, because when you say he stumbled and fall, he didn't fall sinful wise like how we fall, and when you talk about losing everything so as to gain, there's also a loss of what we grab onto. The learning didn't come because you were able to then build again materially. The learning came when you were able to, when we're building who we are as people, that the things of this world aren't what we judge, one another by. We don't define ourselves by it anymore. It's amazing how when the things of this world, whether it's a job title or financial stability or whatever, house ownership, relational stability, when these things are taken away, it's interesting when we then have a look at ourselves, whether it's on our Zoom calls, do a Zoom call with yourself and just talk to yourself if you need that, right? Set up a chat for yourself. or go stand in the mirror. When we self-reflect, it's interesting how if we allow the Spirit to really search our hearts, it's amazing how he will show us all of these, peripheral things that are actually central into how we define ourselves, and my identity. And so, Phil, as you were talking, in the lives of the men that you're working with, there has been kind of thrust upon them, whether, people could say, oh, they made choice or not, but they came to a point where it was not really their own a desire to be at that bottom level where it was made for them. Look, you're broken and there's nothingness here. We're going to take away things. For most of us, though, there's this like kind of slow process where we're sort of, in and out of this world, materialism and my job titles and my family, and then also the other world of Jesus being central, and so we're able to go in and out. And a lot of us don't what's called hit rock bottom. We're able to manage in both worlds. And I think that's the problem, is we're too good at being in between. All of us are too good, especially in America, because we have a lot of resources. We're a very rich nation when it comes to resources. So even our impoverished have the ability to sustain at a level that most of the world doesn't, and so to that brokenness is very hard to come by, to acknowledge that. So then when we talk to people about, well, our hope is in this baby, they're going, yeah, dude, you don't understand my brokenness, man. Like, I got some stuff that no baby's going to be able to touch, and so I think, yes, stepping into this, and this is what needs to happen. And, I would love for New Wine Uncorked on Facebook to be every single day. It's just not that way. And we're going to be taking a couple of weeks off anyways, because it's the 17th right now. And next Friday is the 24th. And the next Friday after that's the 31st. Yes, I can do math in my head with the calendar. It's great, But so for the next 2 weeks, when we're not meeting, what we're hoping for, just like what we're going to seek to do, is to really step in and go, hey, what is Christmas all about? And if for those of you who know Jesus and follow Jesus and read the Bible because you want to know him more, think about this. What does it mean that he was actually born? And then go to Luke 10, where the Good Samaritan story is, and see where they put the hurt person. Is the Samaritan puts them up in an inn. Okay, so there's this inn motif all around. The inn of our hearts. Okay, it's also in a place for care. What am I doing? Am I going to those places of care in order to care for people? And is there room at the inn of my heart for Jesus on a daily basis, right? So to do that. But then for those of you who might have friends, or even some of you who are watching who don't know Jesus, some of you who have friends who don't know Jesus, think about, well, what is this reason? Who is this Jesus? And maybe for those that have friends that don't know Jesus, you could show them some of these Uncorked where we're talking about who this Jesus is, or start asking questions like, hey, where are you at with life? And this is a way for us to really start to relate to the people in front of us, to really care for them, to know them, And so that's what New Wine's all about. And if you want to know more about New Wine, New Wine Skins, I suggest and encourage you to go to our website, new-wineskins.org, and it'll give you the information. You can sign up for our newsletter. We're a nonprofit seeking to build relational bridges in contemporary culture in and through Jesus Christ. We go through our convictions, not around them. And the conviction that we live the most by is the conviction of love, because the Christian God says that he is a God of love. And then he says, go and do likewise. And so like the Good Samaritan cares for the person, helps put them up, but then most importantly, goes and continues to do that. And that's what Jesus says for us, is for us to be carers, And so we're stoked that you joined us, and hope that you have just a wonderful, wonderful time of celebration over this next week. And in 2 weeks, so we'll be off through the 31st, and that first week of January, we'll start up again, New Wine Uncorked. We'll tweet and show some stuff on Facebook. But until then, pause, reflect, and just settle into the joy of Christmas. And on behalf of Phil and Beth and Kayla, I'm Matt. This has been another episode of New Wine Uncorked. Until January of 2022, we will see you on the flip side. Have a good one, and Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.